A very good morning to you all, my dear children. How are you all? Hope you all are keeping fine, isn't it? Children, we have completed all the portions of this term, that is, portions of third term we have completed, and right now we have to do the revision, isn't it? So, we are going to start the revision of each chapters which are included in the third term, and by now I hope that you all have completed all your notes and you have seen all the recorded videos, isn't it? So today we are going to start the revision of chapter 8, The Dying Detective. I hope you all know this chapter very well, isn't it? So let us start this chapter. I'm not going to explain this chapter in detail. I will only just give a brief description of this chapter. Each chapter during the revision video, only brief description will be there, or summary of the chapter will be there, or summary of the poem will be there. What you have to do is that, children, you have to go through the chapter thoroughly, read each and every sentence, all the parts of the chapter you have to read. And you know why I am saying this? Because you know that you are having MCQs also in your exam. So to answer those questions, those MCQ questions, you have to be thorough with the chapter. Okay, children? So read the chapter very carefully and thoroughly. Okay? So children, let us start our revision. And the first chapter, as I told you, which we are going to revise is lesson 8, The Dying Detective. Children, The Dying Detective is one of the 56 Sherlock Holmes short stories written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, and Arthur Conan Doyle, he created the character Sherlock Holmes in 1887, and Sherlock Holmes is known for his sharp logical reasoning and his ability to disguise himself. Okay. And children, Sherlock Holmes stories are milestones in the field of crime fiction. So children, I will give a very brief description of this chapter. Okay, and you have to do, as I told you, you have to go thoroughly, the whole chapter you have to read thoroughly. Okay, so let me tell you the summary or brief description of this chapter. And children, who are the main characters of this chapter? You remember? Yes. First, the central character is Sherlock Holmes. Yes, Sherlock Holmes, then Dr. Watson and Culverton Smith. Right? These are the three characters in this chapter. Okay. So, children, the Dying Detective chapter focuses mainly on Sherlock Holmes himself, who claims to be quite ill and about to die from a Sumatran disease. And what's the name of the disease? Tapanuli fever, isn't it? And Mrs. Hudson, his housekeeper, is quite worried about him. So she convinces Dr. Watson to visit him in the apartment, right? And once Watson has seen Holmes, he too is convinced that Holmes is dying. And when Dr. Watson was called to tend Holmes, as I told you, who is apparently dying of a rare tropical disease, and that disease name is Tapanuli fever, isn't it? And how he contracted it while he was on a case. And this Watson, he was shocked. That he was for not having heard about his friend's illness, isn't it? And when he visits Holmes, Holmes instructs Watson not to come near him because the illness is highly infectious, isn't it? In fact, he thinks that even this Mr. Watson is a doctor, but Holmes says that he can't treat him. So that much serious illness he is having, so that much this type of fever is so infectious that Dr. Watson can't treat him. And Sherlock Holmes instructs him that he will seek help, but not from the man Mr. Watson mentions, but from the one whom he chooses. Okay. So Sherlock Holmes instructs or tells Mr. Watson to wait for him, and he says that at 6 they will resume their conversation. Okay. So Watson was forced to wait, and he was very much worried about Holmes. Okay. Why? Because this man, Sherlock Holmes, was very much ill and he was muttering nonsense all the time. Okay, so Watson was very much worried about Sherlock Holmes. So, while this Mr. Watson waits, he examines several objects in Holmes' room, isn't it? And along with that, he was becoming he was very much worried about this about Sherlock Holmes. And so, while he was waiting, he came to the mantelpiece and he saw a small black and white ivory box was kept there, and it was having a sliding lid. And this and Mr. Watson, he tried to examine that ivory box more closely, but Mr. Holmes grows very angry when Watson touches those items, the items present over there, and especially when he tries to touch the ivory box. Okay. And Sherlock Holmes, he asks for that ivory box, and he instructs Mr. Watson to keep that box among the papers, to place it among the papers, and he tells Mr. Watson to use the sugar tongue to handle or to pick that ivory, to take that ivory box. Okay. Then Mr. Holmes, he instructs Watson to bring Culverton Smith of 13 Lower Burke Street to see Holmes. Wanted to be treated by Culverton Smith. Okay. And who was Culverton Smith? He was a planter, not a medical man. He was a planter, and he was a well-known resident of Sumatra. And he told to Watson that he is well versed in this type of diseases. So he instructed Watson to go and bring Culverton Smith. He asked Watson to anyhow persuade Mr. Culverton Smith to come here and to treat him. And one more thing, he says that anyhow you try to bring Mr. Smith, and maybe he will not agree to come, but you have to anyhow persuade him. Because why? He said that he is having a doubt that he will not come, this Mr. Smith will not come to visit him, because Mr. Holmes told him that they are not in good relationship. Who? Holmes and Culverton Smith, they are not in good relationship. So and what is the reason for that? Because Holmes was doing investigation for the death of Culverton Smith's nephew, and who was the nephew? Victor. What's the name of the nephew? Victor. Okay. And Holmes suspected Culverton Smith for Victor's death. Clear? So Watson agrees. Okay, he says that okay, I will bring him, and I will bring him in cab. But Holmes instructs him not to come along with Culverton Smith. He persuade him to come alone, and he tells Watson not to come along with Culverton Smith. He asks him to return back before Smith reaches here. Okay. Then Dr. Watson goes to Smith's address. Although Smith refuses to see anyone, Watson forces his way in. Once Watson explains his errand on behalf of Sherlock Holmes, Smith's attitude changes drastically. Now, what happens? Smith agrees to visit Mr. Holmes to treat him. Okay, and he says that he will reach there within half an hour. And at the same time, Watson excuses himself, saying that he has another appointment and returns. At the same time, he returns back and he returns to Mr. Holmes. Okay. And when Watson returns back, though he was very much worried about homesickness, but when he reaches there, he finds that Sherlock Holmes was very much better. Okay, he looked good, he looked improved. Okay, and Sherlock Holmes appreciated Watson for his work. Okay, and then what happened? He told Watson to hide behind his bed and tells him, whatever happens, you should not come out from your hiding place. Okay, be there and listen whatever conversation we are having. We means I and Culverton Smith. So you have to listen everything very carefully, but don't come out from your place. And Watson hides himself behind his Sherlock Holmes' bed, and soon Culverton Smith arrives. And what happens then? This Mr. Culverton Smith, what he finds that Holmes has been sickened by the same illness that killed his cousin Victor. Okay, Sherlock Holmes asks him to treat him. He requests him to treat him, and then Culverton Smith agrees to treat. Culverton Smith then sees the little ivory box which he had sent to Holmes by post, and which contains a sharp spring infected with the illness. So what he does, he takes that ivory box and keeps it in his pocket, removing the evidence of his crime. And he believes that because of this spring, Sherlock Holmes is having the illness. Okay. Then Holmes asks Smith to turn the gas up, which Smith does. Okay. Then Smith asks Holmes if he would like anything else, to which Holmes replies, no longer, in the voice of a man near death. What he says, a match to lit a candle. And while he was saying this, his sound was like normal. Okay, he was speaking like a normal man. Okay. And this surprised Mr. Culverton Smith. And at the same time, Inspector Morton enters. Mr. Sherlock Holmes asked Smith to turn up the gas. That was the signal for Inspector Morton to move in. Holmes tells Morton to arrest Culverton Smith for the murder of his cousin, and perhaps also for the attempted murder of Sherlock Holmes. Yes. Smith, still as arrogant as ever, points out that his word is as good as Holmes. In Watson comes out from his hiding place and he presents himself as another witness to the conversation, because Culverton Smith was not at all accepting that he has done the crime. And finally, what happens? Mr. Morton arrests Culverton Smith. Right, children? Then Holmes explains Mr. Watson about his illness, that it was just an act. Okay, he was acting, and in order to arrest Smith, or so that Smith can confess his cousin's murder. Holmes was not at all infected by that irony, that spring which was in ivory box. He was perfectly okay, and as he told that he was starving for 3 days, all these things were fake. Okay, and he said that this all he did was all a part of his investigation. Okay. And at last, he also clarifies that he has every respect for his friend's medical skill. That means he respects Dr. Watson, but he didn't tell about this investigation to Watson, and he apologizes for not telling Mr. Watson about this investigation. Okay, children. So this much was in this lesson, and I hope it is quite all clear to you people. I just told the summary of this chapter. Go through the chapter and read thoroughly so that you can answer all the questions. Even if it is in between questions, you can answer. Okay, children.